Hey, we back. I'm here on Notbot today, and in all the past videos that we've done about, well, pretty much anything, I've said, oh yeah, we won't talk about Shattered. We won't talk about Shattered because they're a lot harder to get anyway. They're a bit complicated, blah de blah de blah. And I figure, you know what, like, let's talk about Shattered. Hey, how's about that? Let's talk about Shattered, because actually I don't think I've done a single video that's even included them yet. And yeah, maybe they are a little bit complicated. Maybe the videos where I've talked about characters are too long already. But I think that deserves its own video then in that case. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to talk through all the Shattered, what I think of them, how to use them, all the rest of it. Now, first thing to note that Shattered in general, like I say, they are a little bit more complicated. Firstly, you cannot get them in crates, you cannot get them in the find command, nothing like that. You'll see they've got these out of 5s next to them, and this is how many shattered pieces you need to get. If you have a look at your ranked, what you might find is that you get some shattered pieces at the end of your at the end of the season. No, the season ends your rank rewards, right? Now these will be shattered pieces for a random shattered character. As you can see, there is currently 6 of them, and well, if you're in Platinum, which I am, you get 3 shattered pieces. Diamond, you get 4. I guess probably Gold, you get 2, and Silver, you get 1. I'm not 100% sure, but that would certainly make sense to me. And it'll probably scale up in the same way as that, just 1 extra shattered piece every big rank that you go up. So that's pretty cool. Like I say, this will be for a random shattered, so it's probably going to take you a while worth of ranked to get any shattered at all. But at the same time, once you've got 1, you'll probably get the rest reasonably quickly. Statistically, you get them all within the same couple of season resets, so yeah. The other thing that's pretty special about them is that this counts as a different element from all the other ones, so you don't get your element bonus for using them with the other elements. I don't think you get an element bonus for using an all shattered team actually either, although feel free to correct me on that. If there is any element bonuses related, it'll have to be you use a team that's all shattered, but I don't think that exists. Anyway, the other thing is when they die, they kind of explode and do a bunch of damage to your opponents. This is splash damage, and it's about 10% of their max damage, I think. So that's not bad. What's really cool about this is it works the same way as supers, and it ignores defense. So that's pretty nice. To compensate for that, they normally have slightly lower stats. Speaking of stats, let's start looking at them, shall we? Try to avoid this video going on absolutely forever. We'll start with Lilith, who is an attacker here. They've got a little nice bit of backstory there for you, as always. I'm sure you can enjoy reading that. It's great. Damage is pretty high, as you can imagine for an attacker, but this is a particularly high damage. I think even among attackers it's one of the higher ones. Health points pretty low. Again, it's an attacker, it's what you expect. Armor very low. Even for an attacker, this is very low armor. All the shattered characters, I believe, I guess we'll find out. I'm pretty sure all the shattered characters have very low armor. I mean, this makes sense, they're called shattered characters, but yes, very low armor, so you're not expecting these characters to live long. They're there for doing a lot of damage. As it says, when the character dies, it shatters and deals, it's actually 30% of normal damage to all enemies. So this is pretty good if you think about it. 30% of normal damage to all 3 enemies is a total of 90%. So it's almost a full attack. Of course, it's split up among the 3 enemy characters, and if any of them are dead, it's going to be less than that, and a regular attack would certainly be better. But yeah, this is certainly worth having. Like I say, it ignores armor, it ignores supers, it ignores attention, it ignores a lot of things, so it's certainly good. But if you compare it to something like Earthquake, it's just considerably worse than something like Earthquake, so do with that information what you will. Now Lilith is a particularly nice one. I like Lilith. Lilith is probably my favourite shattered, because they have some pretty nice abilities actually. Blindness, firstly, is really pretty good actually. Considering that Lilith is an attacker already, which I'm pretty sure most people will agree is the strongest type of the 3. the fact that they have this good super, which is actually for protecting people, really nice. Makes all enemies blind. Their normal attacks have a 50% chance to fail, lasts 2 turns. This is pretty good. If you apply some statistics, you can generally assume that this is pretty much the same as giving the entirety of your team 50% armor. Now, of course, that slightly depends on RNG because it's a percentage chance, not just a percentage damage reduction. But statistically, it is equivalent to giving 50% armor to your team. Now, that's pretty good. That's like, if you compare that with something like Aiden's ability, Smokescreen, it's pretty similar, actually. The difference is Aiden's a tank and is designed to be there to protect your team, whereas Lilith is a shattered character, is a damaging character, is not designed to protect your team. Normally you'll find that if a character has an ability outside of their general usage group, it's going to be worse. So for example, Aiden's healing ability is not as good as an actual healer. To be fair, that's not a great example because Aiden's healing ability is really good, but you get the point. So yeah, the fact that this ability is so good already means that Lilith is a good character. They're an attacker with a good protection ability. What's also good though is Bloodlust. Bloodlust is a pretty nice ability. When dealing normal damage, Lilith has a chance of 65% of striking twice. Lasts 3 turns. So this is one of the longer lasting abilities in the whole game. And a 65% chance of striking twice is pretty good. Now, of course, you can't use it on the first turn that you use Bloodlust because you lose Bloodlust. You only get to use this ability twice maximum, but because this percentage chance is over 50%, you're going to end up profiting off this. You use 1 turn to statistically gain slightly over 1 turn. So, again, it's statistically, and this is why something like an actual solid always happens super is a bit better. Both of them are statistics, but this can make Lilith really difficult to go up against actually in manual battles or something, because if you get a lucky Lilith as an enemy, then you're going to have a hard time. Lilith is going to be doing a lot of damage with the Bloodlust, and the high damage can be protecting your character, the enemy's characters, or your characters if you're using them, with blindness, and then can do a bunch of extra damage when they die. All in all, Lilith is probably, in my opinion, the best shattered. Anyway, let's move on, because I've spent way too long talking about just Lilith, and this video is going to go on forever. Next we have Cole, again, with some fantastic lore up there. The damage, pretty comparable. It's slightly higher, but it's pretty comparable to Lilith, again, obviously an attacker. The health points, again, pretty comparable, and the armor, again, very low. But what about ability-wise? Well, ability-wise, Cole isn't quite as good as Lilith. We have Bleeding, which makes the enemy bleed, reduces their normal healing by 20%, 40%, and then 60% across 3 turns. This is not great. A lot of teams aren't going to have a healer at all, and those that do might not heal in those 3 turns. Also, you're wasting 1 turn to use Bleeding, and only reducing the enemy's turn by 20, 40, or 60%. So you're generally just wasting turns by using Bleeding. I wouldn't recommend it. Weakness is a bit better. It inflicts weakness on an enemy, reducing their normal attack damage by 20% and armor by 30%, and having them miss a normal attack with a 20% chance. Now, those are all pretty interesting things. Most characters don't have an armor over 30%, at least not without abilities. So this is pretty much reducing armor to 0 in most cases. Then you're increasing your own armor by 20% equivalently, which is pretty nice. And having the percentage chance of missing a normal attack too is also pretty nice. But this only affects 1 enemy for a start, which is not great. You kind of want this on more than 1 enemy, and because it's a super, I'm pretty sure it's going to affect a random enemy, which is not great. But the other issue with that is these percentages are pretty low. Normal attack damage reduction by 20% is not huge. A lot of people can do better than that. Missing a normal attack with 20% chance across 2 turns, statistically that doesn't even happen once, and that's only assuming that the enemy attacks with a normal attack twice in those 2 turns, which might not happen anyway. The armor reduction I think is the best one, but if you're looking for armor reduction, then there's a lot better abilities, for example Fulvia's Volcano. So Cole's alright, can get a lot of damage output, but Lilith, just better. Next we have Pandora, if I can spell. So Pandora is a healer. Damage, obviously pretty low. Health points, also pretty low. Armor, pretty low. Heal 28% is not bad for a healer. That's certainly not bad. I'm pretty sure that's one of the higher percentages of healers. I'm not 100% sure because if you saw my last Notepot video, the healer percentages have been changed recently. A lot have been buffed. So yeah. But this is pretty good. When the character dies, deals 30% of normal damage is normal for shattered characters, but it's worth noting that this is not so great on the healers and the tanks of the shattered variety because their damage is so low anyway. This is one of the reasons I would only recommend using attackers that are shattered, because you're not really using their shattered ability if you're not using an attacker. Stolen Mending is returns 45% of normal damage Pandora takes as heal to all her allies for 3 turns. It's a bit of free healing, it's quite nice. It kind of implies that you shouldn't attack Pandora when Stolen Mending's active, but on the other hand, it's not a major amount of damage, and realistically, by the time you're attacking a healer, the attacker's already dead and can't get the healing anyway, so you've pretty much lost the battle. That's my opinion anyway. I think this might be worth using if you want to use Pandora, but doesn't seem great. This is more the sort of thing that you'd want in a tank really, but of course that would be a bit too good, wouldn't it? Then we have Shaming Manipulation. Manipulates an enemy character on the next move to forcibly act, normal attack or heal against their own team. So this is pretty good because normal attacking just generally is quite good. Especially if you get it used on an attacker, that could do a lot of damage to the enemy team. It's basically a free attack, avoid, and a free attack on your team of the stats of the enemy, which is presumably going to be pretty high. So this is actually a really nice ability. Considering the amount of damage that you can do with it despite Pandora being a healer, this is pretty good. Now, I still stand by what I said, that maybe not worth using because you're not getting this shattered thing, and also it's a healer, and I don't really think healers are that worth using anyway. But the Shaming Manipulation is certainly a good super, and if you do want to use Pandora, I would recommend using this as much as possible. So next we have Kage. The stats are pretty much the same on Kage. You may notice that we have heal points this time because supposedly heals are now based on the heal points amount rather than the max health. You may have noticed that this still says max health. I'm honestly not sure if that's a mistake in the writing or if it's a bug or something. After making this video I might report that or go check it out or something like that. But either way, the healing percentage is supposedly exactly the same. I assume it's just a mistake in the writing, so it should be fine. As for the supers, we have Sneaky Regeneration, which heals a random ally by 10% of their max health for 3 turns, which just doesn't seem that great to me when you could just do a regular heal and get the same number of health points to all allies in 1 turn. So yeah, I don't really see the point in this super at all. Then we have Poisonous Potion. Poisons the enemy pet for 2 turns, which means that the pet won't be able to do anything for 2 turns. Now, depending on the enemy's pet, this could be good, but I think the majority of cases, pets are not good enough buffs such that this is worth it. If you compare it to, for example, an armor boosting buff, buff pets give what, like 10% armor, maximum like 13, I think. There is other abilities that can reduce enemy armor by more than that anyway, so I don't know why you would bother just removing the pet. Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps if there's some really good pet added at some point, this could be good, but I think the pets at the moment aren't as good as this super would make out, so I wouldn't bother using that. In general, I would say Kage, just not a great character. Next we have Lonen. Lonen has, funnily enough, a lot more health points, but actually still 5 armor, which makes sense because it's a shattered character, and like I said, I'm pretty sure they will have 5 armor. But for a tank, you kind of want more armor than that. The whole point of shattered is that they're doing damage when they die, and it doesn't matter too much if they die. As a tank, this kind of defeats the point, so while I would advise to only use attackers, I would heavily advise not to use a shattered tank. On the other hand, you will get that damage earlier on because you've got attention on this character and they're going to die first. So I can see some incentive to use a shattered tank, but yeah, I wouldn't go for it because yeah, you'll get this earlier, but this is not much damage, so Oh well. Destructive jump jumps in the air and at the end of turn lands with a big slam, doing 20% face damage to all enemies, but while being in the air has 60% chance to dodge normal enemy attacks. Now the dodge is the main thing you want here, because honestly 20% of base damage to all enemies isn't that great. Maximum that's 60% of base damage total, which is less than a regular attack, and it takes the turn to do it. Well, it does it at the end of the turn, so you know. Now this will avoid armor, as always with splash things like that. Well, not true, Airblades doesn't. But anyway, yeah. It'll avoid armor, which is nice, but 20% of base damage is just not great. Again, just compare it to Earthquake and see how Earthquake does, 2.5 times that damage minimum. The 60% dodge chance is pretty nice. I'm pretty sure you can stack this with Attention. So you could use Attention and then have a 60% chance to dodge all enemy attacks for that turn, because they're all going to be on Lonen. So that's a pretty nice combo, but at the end of the day 60% chance isn't huge. The enemy can always just avoid attacking that turn. You might get hit anyway, because there's still a 40% chance the attack goes through. I don't know, I don't really think that this one's worth using at all, but I can see some incentive. Then we have Healing Shot. The next normal attack will also heal himself by 90% of the damage dealt. This is really nice. Now, a tank doesn't have much damage, so that 90% isn't going to be huge, but it's still a free heal, and it's worth having. As always, it's an ability for a tank. That's a healer's ability, and that's always good. It can avoid you having a healer on your team, but if you compare it to something like Aiden's healing ability is just gonna heal more than this, always. So yeah, I don't know. This is a nice ability, but it's not as good as it could be, so I wouldn't really bother with Lonen if I were you. Finally, we have Mara. Mara's got a little bit more damage than Lonen and a little bit less hit points, but once again, similar, no armor because it's a shattered. So for the supers, we have Cursed Healing. Casts Cursed Healing on a random enemy, causing this enemy to take damage instead of healing when receiving normal heals for 3 turns. Again, this entirely depends on whether the other team has a healer or not, and whether they plan on using it. Now to be fair, it lasts 3 turns, which is pretty nice, and basically just prevents your opponent from using those healings for 3 turns. So against the right team, this could be a pretty good ability. But it's very situational, and if the team doesn't have a healer, it's completely useless. I feel like a lot of teams aren't going to have healers, but it depends if you're going up against the bot or actual people, and at the moment we're going up against the bot, so hey, we'll see healers. Again, it depends on whether they use the healer in those 3 turns, but 3 turns is quite long, so it's not a bad ability, I would say. Safeguard Shield is also not a bad ability. It places a shield in front of a random ally. This is the main issue with it. It's random, as with all supers. The shield totally absorbs the next normal attack and then vanishes. This is only good against normal attacks, of course. Now it is making them completely invulnerable, which is nice, but at the end of the day you're using 1 turn and you only gain 1 turn from the enemies wasted, so it's a 1-for-1 thing really, and you can avoid it if they're at really low health and you've got something splash or an ability or something like that. You can also get around it by attacking the person with the shield with a healer or a tank that doesn't do much damage anyway, and then attacking with your attacker. You've got rid of the safeguard shield and then you do the damage, so it's not hard to work around. I would say compared with a lot of abilities they're kind of useless, this is certainly not bad. It's not a useless ability, it's a fine ability. It's just not great, and it's again kind of situational. So Mara, very situational character in general. But as with the other tank Lonen, I would say probably don't bother using it, just because shattered tanks kind of defeat the point in my opinion. Anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. This one went a bit too long, once again. I kind of expected that. I talked for way too long about Lilith, but yeah, that's the bottom line. Lilith is good, and the other shattered characters, not so much. But yeah, it's up to you, and if you do want to make an all-shattered team, for instance, I could see that maybe having a bit of fun using this shattered ability as frequently as possible. That they certainly have some applications, and especially Lilith I can see doing quite well in a team. Yeah, there's a couple of abilities there that are nice, there's a couple that aren't, as with all characters. But I've gone through everything now, so I'm going to end this one here. Bye!